am the wife of the richest man in Beijing's elite circle. After we got married, we did not interfere in each other's lives. Until one day, he wanted to divorce me for an innocent young dance student. I nodded desperately in agreement. This day had finally come. Chapter 1. At midnight, while I was half asleep, I heard the bedroom door being slowly pushed open. The sound of footsteps drew closer. The man lay down beside me and stretched out his slender arm, pulling me tightly into his embrace. As he breathed against me, the strong smell of alcohol wafted over. I frowned slightly. "You drank?" Luis leaned close to my ear, his deep, magnetic voice soft and gentle. "Can we not get divorced? Let's not get divorced." "Drunk." He repeated those words beside my ear. Chapter 2. I had a secret. I had been reborn. In my previous life, Luis only married me because he had been forced into an arranged marriage. After we married, he was very cold toward me and proposed an agreement that we would each live our own lives without interfering with the other. In order to stay by his side, I readily accepted. Less than 3 years after our marriage, Luis resolutely divorced me for a dance student he had known for less than a year. In order to save our marriage, I swallowed my pride and desperately clung to him, begging him not to divorce me. I could pretend I did not know. He could even continue supporting that woman. But Luis, who had always passed through countless women without ever getting emotionally involved, had truly met his true love this time. For that woman's sake, he did not hesitate to break with his family. Also that he could give her a proper status. He gave me more than half of the assets under his name, asking only that I agree to the divorce. But to me, Luis was also my true love. I had met Luis when I was still a teenager. I attended an all-girls school, and once, when I passed by an all-boys school, I caught a hurried glimpse of a boy leaning against a wall, smoking. He was exceptionally handsome, with cool, fair skin and refined features. His entire being exuded a gloomy, distant coldness. When people spoke of a boy whose beauty could startle the heart at a single glance, this was probably what they meant. Later, when I learned that the man I was arranged to marry was the very boy who had left such a breathtaking impression on my youth, I was so delighted that I could not stop smiling. That was why, even when he offered me a generous divorce settlement, I still refused to divorce him. So Luis went after my family and drove our family business into bankruptcy. In this life, I had seen things clearly. I could not wait for him to hurry up and divorce me for that woman. I would take the divorce settlement and guarantee that I would leave without looking back. Chapter 3. I was reborn on the day Luis proposed the agreement that we would each live our own lives after marriage. Without the slightest hesitation, I smiled and pressed my fingerprint onto the contract. After signing it, I patted him on the shoulder. "Go ahead and have fun. I will absolutely abide by the agreement." Luis knitted his brows slightly. "You look very happy?" I nodded. Then I shook my head. "No, I'm not happy. I'm very sad." Boo-hoo-hoo. I covered my face with both hands and walked toward my room, pretending to be sad. Before I even reached the door, I could no longer suppress my happiness and burst out laughing. Ah ha 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 ha. I did not dare turn around to see what expression Luis had on his face. He probably thought there was something wrong with my brain. But that was not important. In my previous life, my mind had been completely occupied by Luis. In order to please him, I never went anywhere, spent all my time studying some ridiculous cookbook, and stayed in the kitchen all day like a housekeeper. I was clearly a pampered heiress. No, to be precise, I was clearly the wife of a wealthy man. I should have been spending his money and going out shopping, going out and having fun. The next day, I picked up my phone and called Ava. She was my best friend. "Oh, which wealthy madam is this? You actually have time to call a nobody like me. You shameless woman who forgets her friends the moment she gets a man. What are you calling me for?" That was just how Ava was. She had a fiery temper and a sharp tongue, but a soft heart. She treated me exceptionally well. In my previous life, I had let her down. My whole heart had been focused on Luis, and every time Ava contacted me, I turned her down. I tempted her. "You buy things, and I'll pay. We'll sweep through the malls during the day and the nightclubs at night. Are you in?" Ava said. "I'll be at your door to pick you up right away." At the mall, I awkwardly tried to cover myself while looking into the mirror. "Isn't this dress a little too short?" Ava rolled her eyes at me fiercely. "If I had a figure as good as yours, I'd wear something even shorter. A great figure is meant to be shown off. Why do you wrap yourself up so tightly every day? You're too conservative. Be careful, or one day someone will steal your husband away. I laughed awkwardly and looked at myself in the mirror, my long hair hanging down as the tight dress hugged my curves. I froze for a moment. It seemed that I had never dressed like this before. I looked pretty good. I turned to the sales assistant and said, "Pack up all the clothes, bags, and shoes we tried on." How satisfying. Spending Luis's money was truly satisfying. Chapter 4. At night. Lights and shadows intertwined in the nightclub. I ordered a pile of expensive liquor. Looking at the male models dancing seductively on stage, I saw so many muscles and so many men, so I ordered more than a dozen hot-bodied male models to come drink with us. How blissful. I was snuggled in a male model's arms, drinking to my heart's content. When my phone rang, I opened it and saw that it was a message from Luis. "Where are you?" He must have returned home and found neither me nor a table full of food, so he had sent a message to question me. Dazed from the alcohol, I replied, "I'm having a family dinner at my mother's house. I won't be going back tonight. I'll sleep at my parents' house." After sending it, I tossed my phone aside. I raised my hand, stroked the male model's fair and tender face, and asked, "How old are you?" The male model grabbed my hand and slowly moved it down toward his chest. 18. I'm an adult. So young and tender. I liked it. He moved toward my lips, and just as I was about to meet his, the pretty boy in front of me was knocked down by someone's punch. Fuck. Who dared bully my man? I raised my head and met Luis's icy gaze. "Mrs. Luis, is this your family dinner?" Chapter 5. Alcohol could not only make people lose control, but also cause hallucinations. With my drunken eyes narrowed slightly, I smiled at Ava and said, "I've drunk too much. This is terrifying. I'm seeing Luis's disgusting face." Ha ha ha. I laughed so hard that tears nearly came out. Ava looked serious and desperately signaled to me with her eyes. I waved my hand. "I know you hate him too. Don't be afraid. I'll make him disappear." Gathering all my strength, I raised my hand and delivered a hard slap to Luis's handsome face. Ha ha ha. It feels pretty real. Even my hand hurts from hitting him. As I withdrew my hand, my heart jolted. Could it be that this was not a hallucination? I rubbed my eyes, closed them, and rebooted myself. This time, I saw clearly that Luis was standing in front of me in a perfectly tailored suit. The man was tall, and right now, his face was dark and cold, exuding an overwhelming sense of oppression. Half of my drunkenness instantly disappeared. Hi. Before my mind could catch up, my mouth had already spoken. What a coincidence. Luis cast an indifferent glance at the male models sitting around the booth. He withdrew his gaze and looked at me, his expression growing colder and colder. "You like male models?" I nodded. Of course someone my age likes young, handsome men. If I did not have fun at 27, was I supposed to wait until I was 87? Luis stared at me, a dark haze filling his eyes. I avoided his gaze and glanced at Ava, who had covered her face without saying a word. When I saw her pick up her bag, I got the signal and kicked her, preparing to retreat. Luis suddenly bent down and moved closer. I instinctively leaned backward. He grabbed my wrist and pressed down toward me, with nowhere left to retreat. Luis did not stop advancing until my back was pressed against the sofa. "So you've always hated me?" His voice trembled slightly when he said those words. I tried to struggle free of his grip, but he was too strong. The male models on the sofa were so frightened by Luis's icy gaze that they fled in panic. Luis might have had a powerful presence, but surely a single look from him was not enough to scare them all away, right? The male model who had been drinking with me was reliable. He did not leave. I said to him, "Well done. I'll pay you extra later. Double the amount." As soon as I finished speaking, the male model stood up on his trembling legs and bent down fearfully before Luis. "I'm sorry, Mr. Luis. I didn't know she was your wife." Luis glanced sideways at him. "Get lost." The male model was so frightened that he scrambled away. Only then did I learn that this nightclub also belonged to Luis. No wonder everyone was so afraid of him. I placed my last hope in Ava and shot her a pleading look. "What the hell?" I exclaimed. Where was Ava? When had she left? Only Luis and I were left in the booth. Our eyes met. Luis lowered his furious voice and asked, "Aren't you going to give me an explanation?" After several seconds of suffocating silence, I spoke. "Mr. Luis, aren't you crossing the line? What explanation do I need to give you? What is the meaning of you getting angry now? We just signed a post-nuptial non-interference agreement yesterday. Do I need to remind you? You were the one who proposed that agreement." Chapter 6. So what? Luis's eyes grew darker, a faint blood-red hue appearing around them. "You are my wife. Even if you hate me, you still have to stay with me." What kind of rule was that? So he was allowed to do whatever he wanted, but I was not even allowed the smallest freedom? I could not help letting out a mocking laugh. Just as I was about to unleash a torrent of words at him, Luis's thin lips covered mine. "Here, no man except me is allowed to touch you." I sat frozen on the sofa, overwhelmed by panic, shock, and helplessness. The kiss went from gentle to rough. He seemed to be punishing me, biting my lips. My entire body stiffened as he took advantage of the moment to scoop me up by the waist and carry me home. The next day, 2 trending topics appeared in Beijing. First, the richest man, Luis, jealously carries away his beautiful wife. Second, an unwritten rule has been added throughout Beijing. Mrs. Luis is forbidden from entering any nightclub. Chapter 7. Last night, Luis, who had always slept in a separate room from me, took me back to his room and held me in his arms all night. At first, I planned to leave after he fell asleep. Later, I was the one who fell asleep first. Vaguely, I felt his lips brushing against my earlobe as he whispered, "Could you stop wearing short skirts from now on? I hate the way they look at you." After washing up in the morning, I walked into the living room and froze. Luis was wearing a crisp white shirt, his soft hair falling obediently over his forehead. Sitting at the dining table, he looked at me and said in a low, gentle voice, "Eat." What had gotten into him, dressing like that? I stared at him, sizing him up, only to see the tips of his ears quickly turn crimson. Apart from that fleeting glimpse of him in our youth, every time I saw him again, he had always been dressed in suits and leather shoes, mature and composed. He had changed greatly from my memories. The slightly slender, gloomy boy he had once been had grown tall and broad-shouldered, and his delicate features had become sharp and striking. The way he was dressed today made me feel, for one fleeting instant, as though I had returned to the day we first met. I walked straight to the dining table and sat down. After taking a sip of porridge, I said flatly, "At your age, you are no longer suited to pretending to be young." The corners of Luis's lips, which had originally been raised, immediately fell. I set down my spoon. "You don't need to wait for me before eating anymore." "Oh, right. I won't cook and wait for you anymore either. So if you come home and don't see me, there is no need to look for me." "Thank you." After saying that, I turned around, went upstairs, and returned to my room. I slumped down in front of the vanity mirror. Through the reflection, I seemed to glimpse the Luis from before, the one who had been cold and ruthless toward me. His unusual behavior now was probably nothing more than his possessiveness acting up. The story between him and me had already ended badly. There was no possibility of turning to a new chapter. Yesterday, at the nightclub, when Luis carried me away, a pure-looking girl in the booth beside us had stood up in a fit of jealousy and shouted, "Luis." It was Luis's friend who pulled her back down into her seat. I knew her. Camila. She was a dance student. In my previous life, I thought Luis had known her for less than a year. I never expected that they had met not long after our marriage. Judging from the way she called out to Luis, they probably had not known each other for long yet. Luis's true love had appeared in my previous life. For her sake, Luis had not hesitated to drive me to my death. Originally, I had planned to ignore the two of them, live my own life freely, and wait for the day Luis proposed divorce. Unexpectedly, Camila came to my door while Luis was away from home. She curled her lips at me. Contrary to her innocent and harmless appearance, she carried herself like someone issuing a challenge. That feeling made me extremely uncomfortable. What made her think that a wealthy heiress like me was someone she could easily bully? Chapter 8. I had to admit that she did indeed look very pure and innocent, with long black hair, snow-white skin, and a white dress. She looked exactly like the unforgettable dream girl in a novel who died young. maintaining my manners as the hostess. I invited her to sit in the living room. She accepted the tea I brought her and gave a cold, contemptuous laugh. You're fairly pretty. Unfortunately, you're too old. Do you know how old I am? 19. From the moment she entered, her attitude had been extremely arrogant. She was even ruder than I had imagined. She had taken being full of shit to a whole new level. Yet instead of getting angry, I smiled and calmly sat down opposite her. Young lady, don't be so full of yourself. Since when is 27 considered old? What? Are you planning to die at 26? You. Camila's face turned livid. As Mr. Luis's wife, it seems you have no class at all. Haven't you ever gone to school? How could Mr. Luis marry a woman like you? In my previous life, I certainly had class. Even after things became such a mess, I never thought of going after Camila, yet I was still driven to my death by the two of you scumbags. Now that I had let go of my manners, I had to admit, I felt much better mentally. I crossed my legs and shook my limited edition slippers slightly. Little girl, not only have I been educated, but I also have a doctorate. Not only do I have a doctorate, but I was also born into a wealthy family. Not only was I born into a wealthy family, but I am currently the wife of the richest man in Beijing. Use that pig brain of yours and think about it. Since I was able to enter an arranged marriage with him, you can imagine what kind of family I come from. I leaned forward and looked her in the eyes. Do you know what a little girl like you is called in our circle? A gold digger. Camila gritted her teeth and glared at me. So what if I'm a gold digger? My youth and beauty are my assets. There are countless women who like a handsome, steady, top-ranking elite of Beijing society like Luis. Yet he does not even spare them a glance. He is only willing to bow his head for me. We have only known each other for half a month. Yet he has already spent hundreds of thousands on me. When I'm unhappy, he immediately puts down his work and comes to the bar to keep me company. He even said that I make his heart flutter. Oh, so yesterday, his true love had been unhappy, and he had been accompanying his true love for some fun when he happened to run into me. Like a ruler setting off beacon fires just to win a beauty's smile. Luis was even willing to go to the bar he hated most to please her. If that was not love, then how tragic would that be? I raised my eyebrows. So you came to my door because you want me to step aside? She looked straight at me. Yes. I shook my head. Dream on. Camila's expression froze. To my astonishment, I actually heard her inner thoughts. System. Didn't you say Luis's wife was just a weak and useless woman? A cold mechanical voice sounded. It doesn't matter. Luis's wife is merely a figurehead. Everyone in Beijing knows that Luis does not love his wife. You are the only unattainable dream girl who has ever made his heart flutter. Camila sneered inwardly. So no matter how much I humiliate this woman, Luis won't get angry, right? Correct. Then let me teach her a lesson and make her understand that I am not someone to be messed with. Once we get rid of this obstructive supporting character, we can complete the mission sooner. That's right. Go for it. Host. The conversation between Camila and the system ended. Even more shocking than my own rebirth was the fact that Camila was actually a mission-driven seductress with a system. Camila stood up and approached me viciously. At that moment, she looked nothing like an innocent dream girl and much more like a malicious woman. She stopped in front of me, raised her palm, and swung it toward my cheek. By reflex, I grabbed the slipper that was almost falling off my foot. Just as she was about to hit me, I swung my size 7 sole straight into her face. Smack! She was stunned. Luis was stunned too. He had just returned home, and when he saw the scene in the living room, his eyes suddenly widened. Chapter 9. I was screwed. Luis strode toward me on his long legs, hostility radiating from his entire body. The system said smugly to Camila, "The show is about to begin. Let's see how Luis teaches this ungrateful woman a lesson." The moment she saw Luis, Camila's arrogant and domineering expression instantly transformed into that of a delicate, innocent damsel, aggrieved. She covered her red, swollen face, tears glistening in her eyes. She looked so pitiful that anyone would feel sorry for her. Meanwhile, I stood there with a slipper raised high in my hand, looking exactly like a vicious female supporting character. As a top tycoon in Beijing's elite circle, Luis would do anything in a fit of rage to protect his pure first love. Wouldn't he strangle me to death? I guessed that Luis would probably ask for a divorce ahead of schedule. I was both delighted and worried. I had hit his precious darling. Would he still divide his assets with me? This was killing me with worry. Forget it. I had had enough. I spoke first. Let's get divorced. Luis. Luis stopped in front of me, his expression stiffening. The anger from a moment ago vanished without a trace. His face turned deathly pale, and he clenched his knuckles tightly. Don't even dream of divorcing me in this lifetime. Luis's eyes reddened. After staring at me for several seconds, he raised his strong, powerful hand, took the slipper from my hand, and slowly crouched down to put it back on my foot. The marble floor is cold. What if you catch a cold? Are you still a child? After saying that, he took my hand and led me upstairs without looking back. Halfway up, he turned around and instructed Auntie Wong, "Call security. From now on, no strangers are allowed inside to disturb Madam." I did not turn back to see what expression Camila had at that moment. I only felt as though my brain had stopped functioning. After returning to the room, Luis took off his suit jacket. He held my shoulders and slowly pressed me down to sit on the bed. Then he turned and walked into the bathroom, took out a hot towel, crouched down halfway, held the foot I had placed on the floor, and gently wiped it clean. I stared down at him blankly. Luis, who had always been cold and unruly, Luis, who had hated me to his very bones, was now acting so deeply affectionate without even realizing it. If outsiders saw him like this, they might genuinely mistake him for someone who loved me deeply. I awkwardly pulled my foot back. Get out. I want to rest. Luis raised his dark eyes, his tone solemn. I won't cheat on you. Please believe me. All right? Like hell I believed him. I could not be bothered to waste words on him. I lay down on the bed with my back to him. Close the door when you leave. After a long silence, the sound of the door closing reached me. I let out a deep sigh of relief. In the middle of the night, the door to my room was pushed open, and my entire body was restrained within a burning embrace. Luis tightened his arms around me again and again, as though he were afraid I would escape. His deep, drunken voice sounded beside my ear. Amanda, can we not get divorced? I'm going crazy whenever I hear the word divorce. I could not see Luis's expression, but I could hear the choked tremble in his voice. His hold on me tightened. No matter how much I tried to escape, I could not break free. At daybreak the next morning, when I opened my eyes, I saw Luis's tall, slender figure. He was lazily leaning against the bedroom balcony, smoking. Hearing me get up, he stubbed out his cigarette and turned around. It was the first time I had ever seen Luis look so despondent. His skin was pale, his shirt slightly open, his hair messy, and faint dark circles shadowed the area beneath his eyes. I glanced at the ashtray on the balcony, which was almost overflowing with cigarette butts. It seemed he had not slept all night. I could not help complaining. Aren't you afraid you'll smoke yourself to death? He walked over to me and rubbed my hair. Are you concerned about me? I said coldly. I'm not concerned about you. If you die, please leave all your property to me. Luis forced out a faint smile, but mist gathered in his dark eyes. It's fine if you don't love me. It's fine if you hate me. It's fine if seeing my face disgusts you. But if you want a divorce, that will never happen in this lifetime. We looked at each other. His gaze grew increasingly sharp and obsessive. My heart tightened. What a mercurial lunatic. He was sick. Even more insane was the fact that, later that day, he had someone replace all the marble flooring in the villa with wooden flooring. Chapter 10. After that day, I never again saw the Luis who spoke to me gently and softly. It was as though his cerebellum had atrophied, twisting him into a sick man. In my previous life, he had loved Camila to his very bones without ever bringing her home. Yet now, he was flirting with her on the sofa right in front of me. From time to time, the system's commentary would even pop up. Congratulations, host. Luis's affection for you is continuously increasing. Keep using your beauty to seduce him. I glanced at the red conquest progress bar above Camila's head. It was almost full. Camila responded coquettishly to the system. Don't worry, he likes pure, innocent-looking girls like me. Winning him over is only a matter of time. His wife is truly shameless. Things have already reached this point. Yet she still has the nerve to refuse a divorce. She can really endure a lot. The system mocked sarcastically. His wife is just a simp. The more she grovels after him, the more disgusted a man becomes. Host. You don't need to worry. The divorce is only a matter of time. Keep Luis happy. And when he's lost in passion, whisper a few words into his ear. Okay. One woman and one system. They were unbearably noisy. Luis lifted her chin and moved close to her lips. Yet his gaze shot coldly toward me. He was like a toad sitting on my foot. It did not bite, but it was utterly disgusting. After seeing Camila off, he stared sharply at the wooden floor. After pausing for several seconds, he made a phone call. Have someone change the floors back to marble tomorrow. That evening, I took the divorce agreement to him for his signature, only for him to suddenly tear it to pieces again. Amanda, you are not allowed to even think about divorce. I suspected he had schizophrenia. Chapter 11. Eva. I really fucking can't take this anymore. I want a divorce. Help me. In a private room at a cafe. Aside from the strange matter of my rebirth, which I did not say out loud, I told Eva everything else. After listening to me, Eva nearly spat a mouthful of coffee onto my face. What? You want to divorce Luis? Eva looked as though she had heard the biggest joke in the world. You were so obsessed with Luis that you practically lost your mind. Back then, after that one glimpse of him when you were young, you were so infatuated that even after walking straight into a utility pole and collapsing to the ground, you were still smiling like an idiot. On the day you married him, you happily told me that you had no regrets in this life. And now you're telling me you want to divorce him? When you fell back then, I saw Luis look over. He looked shocked at first, then lowered his eyes and smiled softly. At the time, I thought there was definitely something between you two. There was nothing between us at all. He did not even know that fangirl was me. Fortunately, he did not remember. Otherwise, he would have one more reason to hate me. Seeing my serious expression, Eva stopped smiling. You're serious? I nodded. I originally planned to endure it and wait for him to bring up the divorce himself. After all, if he cheated, he would be in the wrong, and I could divide the marital assets more favorably. But now his brain has short-circuited, and he just refuses to divorce me. I've even given up on asking for a divorce settlement. As long as he agrees to divorce me, I don't want anything, but he still refuses no matter what. Eva suddenly understood. No wonder your personality changed so suddenly some time ago and you asked me to go out partying. All right. Stop looking so miserable, Eva said. If you want a divorce, isn't that easy? If he finds women, you go find men. Give him a green hat and see who can outplay whom. At the mention of men, I let out a deep sigh. Where am I supposed to find men? Have you forgotten? Every nightclub in Beijing has banned me from entering. Eva snorted coldly. Leave that little matter to me. Forget ordinary men. I can even find you a male celebrity. Eva really did find me a male celebrity. Chapter 12. The other party had debuted as a child actor. He had a few works under his belt, but he was not very famous. I glanced at his information card and asked in surprise, "You're only 18? By the river in the park." Lucas removed his mask unconcernedly. He was very tall, wearing silver earrings, and his whole person was flamboyant and unrestrained, filled with the breath of youth. So what if I'm 18? I really like older women. That Eva, why could she not find someone a little more mature? Lucas seemed to see my doubt and said in a low voice, "Don't worry, I'm not childish. Forget it. In any case, it was just acting." I cleared my throat lightly. Eva told you everything, right? Lucas bent down and leaned closer to me, confusion coloring his eyes. Miss, if we're having an affair, shouldn't we perform it openly for your husband to see? What do you mean by asking me to meet you in a secluded park? I came to my senses as though waking from a dream and said awkwardly, "Sorry, I've never dated before and don't have much experience. Let's just treat this time as getting to know each other first." I took a bank card from my bag and handed it to Lucas. "This is the advance payment. You just need to cooperate with me. After the matter is done, I'll transfer the remaining balance to this card." Lucas accepted the card, and a strange glint flashed through his eyes as he looked into the distance. Suddenly, he hugged me, resting his chin lightly on my shoulder and smiling brilliantly. "Hug me, I won't disappoint you." Seeing my body stiffen awkwardly, Lucas explained, It's just acting. We're practicing first. If you can't even do this, how are you going to make your husband believe it? After hesitating for a few moments, I wrapped my arms around his waist. My husband is extremely powerful. He might ruin your reputation completely, but I will give you enough money to compensate you. This is going to be a hard battle. Are you ready? Lucas looked across from us, the corners of his lips lifting slightly. I have already stepped onto the battlefield. Chapter 13. When I returned home that night, the living room was dim, with no lights on. My gaze swept around before finally settling by the window. Luis's tall figure, with broad shoulders and a narrow waist, was hidden in the darkness. I turned on the light. The floor-to-ceiling window reflected the hard outline of him trembling as he lit a cigarette. What was he doing? Standing here in the middle of the night to scare people? I withdrew my gaze and prepared to go upstairs. I can make him disappear from Beijing. Luis exhaled a mouthful of smoke, his voice as cold as ice. My footsteps paused slightly. I turned around and met Luis's cold, sinister eyes. On the floor were photos of Lucas and me embracing in the park. A chill ran down my spine. You had someone follow me? Luis calmly crushed out the cigarette and approached me step by step, like the silence before a storm. You already brought up divorce. Is it strange that I had someone follow you? You hate me and find me disgusting because of him? Luis forced me back into a corner. What is so good about him? He's just a kid. What can he give you? With my back pressed against the wall, I stared straight at Luis. Confusion and incomprehension surrounded me. I wanted to see through him. He clearly wanted a divorce too. What exactly was he doing? Pulling back my thoughts, I said, I won't take a single penny of the divorce settlement. Is that enough? What? Luis stared at me with bloodshot eyes, nearly overflowing with hatred so intense it looked as though blood would spill from them. His gaze carried a possessiveness I had never seen before. Amanda, if you want a divorce, it will only happen if I die. By the way, I heard your family's company has been experiencing internal turmoil recently. Luis pressed his lips together, lowered his head, and laughed coldly. If I step in and muddy the waters a little, what do you think will happen? Your father-in-law is getting old. Do you think he can handle the company going bankrupt? You wouldn't dare. My voice trembled. I knew he would dare. Luis's methods were sinister and ruthless. It had been the same in my previous life. In order to force me to divorce him, he drove my family into bankruptcy. The laughable thing was that the same threatening method was now being used to force me not to divorce him. Luis lifted his eyelids. His expression grew even colder and darker, and even his handsome features could not hide his ruthlessness. If you dare divorce me, I dare make your family's company collapse. He raised his thin, slender hand and toyed with my hair. Be good. Cut things off with that kid and obediently stay by my side. All right? I believed that I had never done anything unforgivable, so why did I have to fall into his hands in both lifetimes? If I could return to the moment we first met, I would never look toward that boy's school. Never let my gaze linger on him for even a single second. Stop crying. Luis wrapped an arm around my waist and pulled me into his arms. He lowered his head and coaxed me softly. Give me a chance. All right? As long as you don't mention divorce, I'll agree to anything. I raised my hand and touched the tears at the corners of my eyes. I was truly useless. He had only threatened me a little, and I had cried. I wiped away my tears and pushed him away forcefully. You want to bring me down? Luis, are your company's accounts clean? What? Do you want both of us to go down together? I glared at him with hatred. You want me to cut things off with him? You can fantasize about that in your dreams. I love him, and I am determined to be with him. I am absolutely getting this divorce. Since you don't agree to negotiate, then we will go through legal procedures. I will have my lawyer contact you. And also, I, Amanda, am least afraid of being threatened. Where are you going? Luis anxiously and frantically grabbed my wrist. I shook off his hand. Starting today, I'm moving out. Chapter 14. Luis darted forward and blocked my way, shaking his head helplessly as tears instantly filled his eyes. He choked out in a low voice. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have threatened you. I only said that deliberately because I was afraid you wouldn't want me anymore. How could I possibly hurt you? I would never do anything to your family's company. Believe me. Luis's voice gradually began to tremble uncontrollably. He looked at me, then cautiously grasped the corner of my clothes and pleaded. It's all my fault. Please don't leave, okay? I remained silent. Luis grew so anxious that his eyes turned moist and bloodshot. His expression humble and broken. I'll kneel down for you. Please don't leave, okay? It was as though he would immediately shatter if I refused him. He had humbled himself into the dust. Seeing that I was still unmoved, he slowly loosened his grip on my clothes. He looked at me, his Adam's apple bobbing again and again. The bitter smile he forced out was filled with loneliness and sorrow. The weather forecast said it would rain today. Leave tomorrow instead. Don't worry. I have something to do tonight, so I won't be home. After Luis left, it did indeed begin to rain. The rain went from a gentle patter to a torrential downpour. Through the window, I caught sight of Luis's car still parked downstairs. Could he actually be outside getting soaked in the rain and not have left at all? Whatever. I drew the curtains and went to bed. Even if he got drenched to death, it had nothing to do with me. Late at night, Auntie Wang came knocking on my door. Madam, please go take a look at Mr. Luis. He refuses to come inside and wouldn't let me tell you. The rain is so heavy. His body definitely won't be able to withstand being soaked in it all night. Lunatic! He was actually outside. After thinking for a moment, I got out of bed and went outside. In the curtain of rain, Luis's tall, slender body was half curled up as he crouched on the ground. Rain poured down from above his head and flowed along his jaw. He looked like a pitiful abandoned dog. I shifted the umbrella over him and said flatly, "Come home." Luis slightly lifted his face, which was covered in moisture. It was impossible to tell whether it was rainwater or tears. He raised his arm and took my hand. Honey, I was wrong. Please don't abandon me. I ignored him, folded the umbrella, and went inside. He followed closely behind me and entered the house. Obediently, he returned to his room without bothering me again. I did not sleep well all night. When I woke up the next day, it was almost afternoon. After washing up, I was preparing to pack my luggage and leave when I happened to run into Luis entering the house with his arm around Camila. Not long afterward, Luis came to find me, his voice filled with undisguised impatience. What will it take for you to agree to divorce me? Be straightforward, and don't give me that nonsense about loving me. I slapped my ears in shock. I suspected I was hearing things. What did you just say? I asked. Chapter 15. Luis repeated impatiently. What will it take for you to agree to divorce me? At that point, I could no longer be bothered about his unpredictability, mental confusion, or whatever was wrong with his brain. It was as though I had blazing wheels beneath my feet. Moving so quickly I was almost about to take flight. I hurriedly took the divorce agreement out of the drawer in my room and handed it to him. I've already signed it. You sign it. Luis took the divorce agreement in astonishment, looking shocked as though he had never expected that I would agree to the divorce. Here we went again. When one side of his brain shut down, the other lit up. Whatever an idiot looked like, he looked exactly like that. All he knew how to do was act pretentious and forget everything. When I proposed divorce, he got down on his knees and begged me not to leave. Now he was standing there shocked about it. Fortunately, I had kept a backup plan. I had prepared 2 divorce agreements. If I was the one who proposed the divorce first, I would leave with nothing. If he was the one who initiated the divorce, then he could forget about shortchanging me by even a penny. 2 villas, 5 luxury cars, and another 100 million. I was already asking for very little. If you have no objections, sign it, I urged him. Luis pretentiously flipped through it a few times, then took out a fountain pen and prepared to sign. Camila, who had half her head poking out from behind the bedroom door, had a grin that was practically stretching to her ears. Congratulations, host. You are about to complete your conquest. Good grief. The red conquest progress bar above Camila's head had already reached 99%. The system showered her with praise. It's all because host is so beautiful that the conquest has gone this smoothly. Camila smiled contentedly. Of course, but this mission really wasn't a loss. The target is so handsome. His exquisitely flawless face and perfect body proportions are worthy of a high-quality member of Beijing's elite circle. Every time I look at him, I almost get a nosebleed. Fortunately, the mission will only be completed after we're married. Once I get rid of this annoying woman standing in the way, I'll make sure to enjoy a loving relationship with him. While listening to Camila and the system chatter endlessly, I stared unwaveringly at Luis as he put pen to paper. However, Luis stopped with the pen hovering over the page and did not move. Damn it, what are you thinking about? Sign it already. I sensed that something was wrong. Luis's face suddenly turned deathly pale, and fine beads of sweat continuously seeped from his forehead. He gripped the fountain pen tightly, moving it away from the paper one moment and placing it back down the next. His handsome features twisted together in pain. It looked as though he were desperately confronting and tearing himself apart. After several tense moments, he suddenly let out a low laugh, only for his expression to darken again immediately afterward. He looked exactly like he had split personalities. I wanted to press down on his hand and force him to sign, but unexpectedly, he abruptly threw away the fountain pen and stumbled out in flight. Camila was so furious that she jumped out and stamped her feet. I was even angrier than she was. Okay? I fell into deep thought. Could Luis actually have multiple personalities? No wonder his personality was so unpredictable. One moment, he was begging me not to divorce him, and the next, he wanted a divorce. Luis locked himself in the study on the 3rd floor, and I seized the opportunity to sneak into his bedroom. I wanted to prove whether he was actually ill or not. If he was ill, there should be medication. Chapter 16. I expertly searched through his bedroom, the drawers, the wardrobe. Under the bed, there were no medicine bottles anywhere. Had he already given up on treatment? While I was pondering this, my gaze landed on the photo album lying on the nightstand. The first thing I saw was a photo of Luis in a white shirt when he was young. As though possessed, I began flipping through it. This guy only looked remotely human when he was a teenager. When I reached the 3rd page, there were no photographs inside. Instead, a single drawing was tucked into it. The person in the drawing looked very familiar. It was a girl wearing a loose school uniform with her hair tied in a high ponytail. She was lying beside a utility pole, smiling foolishly. I suppressed the raging storm in my heart. Impossible. It could not be me. On the back of the drawing was a dense row of words, like a diary entry. Today, I met a girl across from school. She was very pretty, bright and radiant, with clear, large eyes. She is my type. She stared at me and smiled. I was too embarrassed to meet her gaze, so I lowered my head and smoked to ease my nervousness. When I looked up at her again, I saw that she had walked straight into a utility pole. Even while lying on the ground, she turned her head and smiled at me. She was really adorable. It was only a fleeting encounter. I wonder whether I will ever have the chance to see her again. The final lines read, "Writing this again after 11 years. Today is August 3rd, 2021. Fate is truly marvelous. I have always resisted arranged marriages, but I never imagined that the person I would be arranged to marry this time would actually be the girl I met across from my school when I was young. So her name is Amanda. I am truly hopeless. When I met her today, I was so nervous that I did not even dare lift my head. She is still beautiful, almost unchanged from my memory. The next time we meet, she will be Mrs. Luis. I look forward to the day I marry her." After reading it, I covered my mouth in astonishment. Luis liked me? But if he liked me, why had he been so cold toward me after our marriage? Why had he driven me to a dead end? With too many questions troubling me, I took the drawing and ran to the study on the 3rd floor to find Luis. Chapter 17. Get out of my body! Just as I reached the door of the study, my footsteps abruptly stopped when I heard Luis's voice. Was Luis arguing with himself? Could he really be ill? I pressed myself against the study door and continued listening. I heard Luis sneer and roar in a low voice. What difference is there between people like you and thieves? You steal other people's lives to complete your so-called missions. Why shouldn't I resist? Ha 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 ha. Luis sneered again. Original consciousness who has awakened. I advise you to give up resisting. I have a system supporting me. Eradicating your consciousness is no difficult task for me. Surrender. Hand over control of the body to me and completely merge into me. I gently pushed the study door open just a crack. Through the gap, I saw Luis curled up in pain on the floor, gripping his own throat fiercely. Fuck you. You took over my body and forced me to separate from the person I love most. And now you want me to surrender? So what if you have some damn system? Come on. Then, erase me. You want to use my body to win over Camila and complete your mission? Dream on. If I die, You and the system will both be eliminated. Luis gritted his teeth viciously. Then let's disappear together. My eyes widened in shock. This was insanity on top of insanity, utterly beyond belief. In other words, Luis's body had been occupied by a conqueror. Both Camila and the intruder inside Luis's body were conquerors. They were trying to conquer each other, while neither of them knew the other was a conqueror. This was a high-level showdown. At that moment, the systems belonging to the two conquerors sounded their alarms. Warning! The target of conquest is attempting self-destruction. Host, please stop the original owner from committing suicide immediately. Not far away, Camila received the warning and came running over at full speed. I charged into the study. Luis was trying to kill himself. He was gripping his own neck with all his strength, rolling on the floor. The moment he saw me, tears poured from Luis's eyes. His eyes were bloodshot, and a despairing voice escaped his throat. Amanda, I'm sorry. In our next life, I'll marry you again. Forget about the next life. I crouched down and forcefully pried Luis's fingers apart. Don't kill yourself. Stay alive. You're not the one who deserves to die. So what if they were conquerors? So what if they had systems? They took over other people's bodies, stole other people's lives, and stopped at nothing to complete their missions. In the eyes of people like them, someone dying meant nothing more than getting rid of an obstacle. They did not feel the slightest guilt. Chapter 18. When their mission points rose, they were ecstatic. When their mission points fell, they wreaked havoc without restraint. I lifted my eyes and looked at Camila, who had rushed into the study. When she saw that Luis was still alive, she heaved a deep sigh of relief. The system's electronic voice sounded again. Fortunately, the target is still alive. Otherwise, both of us would have been erased. Is that so? I sneered, then turned and leisurely said to the intruder inside Luis's body, Camila, your target is also a missioner. Camila looked at Luis in shock. The word inconceivable was written all over her face. I had previously heard the conversation between Camila and her system. Mission Rule 1, you must never let the other party know that you are a missioner. Otherwise, the mission will be deemed a failure. When I had just learned that there was an intruder inside Luis's body, I had been extremely shocked. Since both of them had systems, it was impossible for them to pursue each other without discovering the other's identity. There was only one possibility in this high-level match. Both systems had blocked the other's communication, so neither could hear the other's inner thoughts. Sure enough, at that moment, both of their systems issued mechanical warnings simultaneously. Host, mission failed. You are about to be erased. Data unlinking in progress. Camila and the intruder inside Luis's body let out heart-wrenching screams in unison. No! Amid their grief-stricken howls, the systems began the death countdown. 1, 2, 3. Erasure successful. The systems will automatically self-destruct in 2 seconds. Bang! After the two missioners disappeared, I asked Luis, since when was your body taken over? Luis said it had been on August 3, 2021, the night after he met me for our arranged marriage. Curious. I asked again, then when did your consciousness begin to awaken? At the mention of this, Luis seemed rather angry. He knitted his brows slightly and pretended to be annoyed as he pinched my cheek. I was awakened by how furious I got when you found male models to entertain you. My gaze landed on his face, my eyes brimming with affection. Luis smiled tenderly and reached out to brush the bridge of my nose. Honey, don't leave me, all right? I nodded and threw myself into his broad embrace. I won't leave you. I already fell in love with you when I was young. Now that I know everything you did to hurt me was beyond your control because someone had taken over your body, what reason could I possibly have not to forgive you? My dear husband, this is what I should call you, right? My tone was calm, revealing neither joy nor anger. Luis hugged me even tighter, his hands trembling slightly with excitement. Honey, thank you for understanding me and forgiving me. Actually, I fell in love with you at first sight when I was young. The suffering is over now, and after the rain comes clear skies. We will never be separated again. I truly could not hold back my mocking laughter. I pushed Luis away and looked at his face with contempt. The more I looked at him, the more I wanted to laugh. Seeing me laughing so hard that my body shook, Luis frowned slightly. What's wrong with you? My smile vanished, and I enunciated each word clearly. Was what I just performed what you wanted? Luis's pupils constricted. What do you mean? I stood up. Is your brain completely empty? Or do you simply think I'm too stupid? What makes you think that I, someone who has already died once, would be moved by a drawing and a diary entry you fabricated? Luis raised his head, his eyelids trembling slightly. Then he lifted the corners of his lips and smiled. I don't understand what you're talking about. Honey, stop making trouble. I bent down, grabbed Luis by the collar, and yanked him toward me. Stop pretending. You're truly disgusting. Isn't your mission to make the reborn me fall in love with you again? Luis's smiling face suddenly froze. Shock, panic, and utter unpreparedness flickered through his eyes. How did you know? Chapter 19. I snorted coldly and curled my lips. An ordinary sheet of paper that hasn't yellowed after 11 years? A pencil drawing that hasn't faded after more than a decade? Those words were later written in fountain pen, so fresh that the ink even smudged when the album was closed. Did you take me for an idiot you could toy around with? Luis anxiously tried to explain, but I interrupted him. Back then, across from the school, you never noticed me at all. You looked over and smiled because a girl across the street was waving at you. That girl was your first love, wasn't she? I waved my hand. It doesn't matter anymore. Luis remained unwilling to give up and still wanted to explain, but I said wearily, missioners have red mission progress bars above their heads. I only saw yours after the intruder disappeared. Just now. I had not seen Luis's mission progress bar before because his consciousness and the intruder's consciousness had been fractured and split apart. Neither of their bars appeared until he regained control. I had already suspected that there was something wrong with Luis. A few days ago, Ava called me and told me that Luis had invited her out. During their meal, he kept asking about me, probing into every detail. He did not stop until he had managed to learn that I had seen him when I was young. When I found that drawing and diary entry in his bedroom, it suddenly dawned on me that he was setting a trap for me. It was only after everything that had just happened, when I saw his mission progress bar, that I learned why he had refused to divorce me. This high-level game had almost gotten me, a reborn woman, killed all over again. Don't you love me? Luis narrowed his eyes and let out a sinister sneer. You were even willing to die for me in your previous life. Why won't you fall into my trap now and let me complete my mission? At this moment, every disguise fell away. Luis's ugly true face was completely exposed. He roared savagely. I'm asking you a question. Why don't you keep loving me like a dog? He lowered his head with a bitter laugh. And here I was, genuinely falling for you, deceiving me, bullying me, and setting a trap for me, all for the sake of completing his mission. He called that genuinely falling for me? I grabbed the fountain pen from the desk and violently stabbed it into his palm. Amid his agonized wails, I pulled the pen back out, and blood instantly splattered all over the floor. While he was in pain, I finished him off. I pressed down on his hand and made him sign the divorce agreement. As I left, I kicked him viciously. I was so furious that I could barely form my words. Meeting you was fucking rotten luck. Luis's mission failed. His punishment was that the richest man in Beijing's elite circle, once seated high above everyone else, became penniless. His glamorous exterior faded away, and he slowly rotted. For the rest of his life, he would never receive anyone's love. Like a rat in the gutter, he scraped by, fighting homeless people for food,